sorry. Would Camarillo Library Board please come to order? Could you please let the record reflect that all members are here? Could you please rise? Ms. McDonald, could you lead us in the flag salute?
Please rise and join us in the flag salute with your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any amendments to the agenda this evening?
We have no amendments this evening.
Okay. We'll move to public comments. This is a time that we take comments from the audience that aren't on items that aren't on the agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the commission this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. That would be minutes,
Move the approval.
or consent calendar, I mean.
Move the approval.
I'd like to take one item off of the minutes calendar, or consent calendar. Boy, am I reading that minutes. We have our leader of the library here tonight, and I'd like to let her say something or two about what's coming up packages, if the board doesn't mind.
Would you like me to revise my motion?
Yes,
Or
please.
just have her?
Why don't you just put it under the staff times?
Your Honor, if you would like, you could go ahead and pass the minutes, and then under staff comments, Mrs. Wolf could come up and update you.
Okay, we can do it that way.
You got a motion?
Okay, we have a motion for the consent calendar.
Second.
Second, please vote. That motion passes 5-0. Now we'll move into staff comments. Any comments? Oh, come on up. Come on up. We have plenty of time for you. Don't worry if somebody says you don't have time for you. We do.
Thank you so much. I will keep it brief, but there's so much. The library is hopping. It's July. It's our busiest month, surpassed last year only by a little bit for Chinese New Year's, but we had, for example, 300 children and their caregivers and parents at this morning session of the Wacky Wednesday.
What now? I'm sorry.
Wacky Wednesday, every Wednesday in the summer, we have a special program. Today was animals. So we had some bunnies there and an opossum and a fox and lots of fun for the kids. Very briefly, you may see some lawn signs out this summer, that say Camarillo Library Reading Champion lives here. This is something new that we've tried. Other libraries have done. We gave away about 190 lawn signs in the first couple of days that summer reading started. So people were really excited about those. And we have something going on just about every single day in the summertime. This year we've added some science programming on top of the regular children's programming, and Stop Summer Slide, which is to help students to stop the slide in their academic progress that happens typically over the summer months when they're not in class all day. So that's been well received by parents. And there are some fun events for adults. We have a Facebook science photo contest. So you dress up as your favorite sci-fi character from a book, or it could be a movie that came out from a book, post it on Facebook, and then those with the most likes over the summer will win prizes, as well as a science trivia challenge with tickets to Disney for a family of 4. So that'll be lots of fun. Any questions for me? Yes?
Questions, Kevin?
Just have a comment. In our neighborhood, they do have one of those signs in their lawn about the summer reading program, and I was pleased to see that. And it's real self-explanatory what it was, but it's posted where a lot of people can see it. So that's a really great idea.
Oh, good. Glad you like it. Thank you.
If you're not, Bill?
Are you doing this program that maybe it's through the Friends of the Library, where the children earn some credits to take to the bookstore? And
Yes, we have reading logs available, as we do with every summer reading program, and after so many hours of reading, they get a beach ball with the Camarillo Library name on it, and also they can get a coupon for the Friends of the Library bookstore.
it might be
For a
why all
children's
the
book.
beach balls show up at the community concerts.
That could be.
I'd like to ask a question for, we have the League of Cities Conference comes up in September.
Yes.
If there's something, through you and Mr. Petropoulos, you see something that might pertain to something that affects the library or either way, let us know so that we can be prepared to maybe do something with that up there.
Okay, very good.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, do we have any comments from from our commissioners here? Any comments?
No comments.
Seeing none?
Thank
We're
you.
adjourned.
Call this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District Board of Directors to order and ask the record to reflect that all board members are present. Are there any amendments to this agenda?
Staff has no amendments.
I do your
Okay.
your chairmanship or whatever this one is. I have two items that I just want to, I have a couple of questions on, so it might just be easier to pull them out. That's C and D on the consent calendar.
Okay, C and D, and we'll move that to departmental
C and D.
in the consent calendar. Any other changes? Okay. That gets us down to public comments. I don't have any cards. Is there anybody who would like to speak to the Camarillo Sanitary District Board of Directors? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move to the consent calendar.
Move the approval less the items that were pulled.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items C and D, which have been moved to departmental. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so we're now down to departmental. Item C, amendment to agreement, chemical root control services. Is it better to ask your question,
Yeah,
or would
for-
you like a full staff report?
No, that's fine, if I can ask my question. And the question kind of applies to both of them. We have contracts for both the chemical root control service and the biosolids hauling service, that one's out till November 2015, the other one's June 2016. Yet we're coming in asking for amendments. From all I can see, reading this staff item, agenda item, is increasing the budget for them. So do all of these agreements have clauses in them that have that rate increase built into them? And I guess the other question would be, since, if not, well, I'll ask that one first, then I'll ask my next one. Sorry.
You are correct that the reason this is before you is we are requesting an increase in the, not the budget, because we have the adequate funds in the budget, but the dollar amounts defined in the contract. Historically, the way our contracts have been worded is they have included a maximum dollar amount. One of the things we are looking into is in the future if there's a way to structure the contracts to provide a little more flexibility, recognizing that we can't always predict from year to year the exact number of units, and as long as it stays within budget, may not be necessary to always have to bring this back. But in this case, because of the way the contracts are worded, we need to bring it back before you to change the dollar amount.
And may I continue? So all of the contracts, and they're not in here, so I'm sorry if I have to ask these questions, but they all have a built-in escalation clause built on the number of hours served or hauls. Is there something formula in the contracts?
Actually, there's not necessarily an escalator. There's just a maximum dollar amount that the contract is up to on an annual basis. What we are trying to move more towards is trying to identify a unit cost, for example, maybe a ton hauled, for example, with the hauling the biosolids, so that as long as we stay, what we're really trying to achieve with the contract is to lock in a rate per unit and have that guaranteed over the life of the contract. What's difficult to do is predict from year to year how many units we need to move, and as long as we can stay within budget, we'd like to have the flexibility to not have to bring the item before you every time we have a slight adjustment in number of units. However, the way the contracts are currently worded, and we actually do have some contracts worded different ways. A number of them, the ones before you tonight, are worded with a maximum dollar amount. Others are more flexible where it's based on a unit. More recent contracts where we base it on a unit amount that is intended to stay within budget.
So in the one case, it's the number of times they've had to go in and clear out the roots, and that was more than expected? Is that
Yeah, exactly. So talking about the two different contracts, the reason they're both increasing in quantities is on the root contract. because it's been so dry, the moisture around the seal or the joints on our sewer system, because it, plants are looking for moisture anywhere they can find it. We're finding that the root intrusion has been greater because there's a source of moisture that maybe in the past hasn't been so necessary for the plants to seek out, and so we're getting more root intrusion than historically we would normally get. And it's just a nature of the climate and the drought that we're in. So that's caused the increase there. On the biosolids hauling, this is going to be an increase that we'll see a little more this year, but going forward more than we've seen in the past. And what I mean by that is historically, before we had our tertiary treatment, we didn't produce as much biosolids. Then when we've now converted a number of years ago to tertiary treatment, we've kind of been building up a backlog, if you want to call it, of biosolids that need to be hauled. And that's what we need to catch up on this year. And then we will still have, going forward, not as much as this year, but an increase over maybe historically 5 years and further back that we used to haul. So we're just trying to catch up.
So if I can just to make sure I understand, so the contracts read that for a certain number of hauls for, and we'll use that one, loads for a certain amount of money, and that was not to exceed 90,000. Because we have more trips, it had to increase the cost.
Correct.
Not because the cost had gone up.
That's correct.
So it was just the volume that has changed.
In both cases, the volume's gone up, not the unit cost.
Not the unit cost. Okay, so that was locked in. So the unit cost isn't changing. It's just a matter that we've increased the amount of service, so to speak.
Correct.
And somebody else have a question?
That was
Oh.
my question. My question was whether we were talking about an increase in the unit cost or increase in the volumes of
I was
services
confused.
provided, and I think you've answered
Okay.
that, so thank you.
So is there a motion?
Move to approve item C on consent.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item C, the Chemical Root Control Services Agreement Amendment. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Item D.
Move the approval. We definitely want to move that.
Second.
Motion and a
Can I make a
second.
comment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Have we ever talked to Agriman about potential of them taking and using our biosolids?
Yes, they have. They actually met with staff and visited our plant, and they're contemplating if there's an opportunity there, but the ball's in their court right now. We're waiting for them to.
I sent them your way because it may be cheaper for us in the long run.
Correct, yes, and maybe something can be worked out.
Good.
This one goes through June of 2016.
Okay. Do we have a second on?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve item D, the Biosolids Hauling Services Agreement Amendment. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously.
They said they'd do it.
Comments from staff?
I don't believe we have any comments from staff.
Comments from board members? Okay. Meeting's adjourned.
Okay, I'd like to call the Camarillo Successor Agency for July 9th to order, and let the record reflect that all the members are present. Amendments to this agenda?
Staff has no amendments.
Okay. Public comments for the Successor Agency. Let's move down to the consent calendar then,
Move the
please.
approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, that gets down to the departmental resolution approving the refinancing of the Camarillo Community Development Commission bonds with possible issuance, sale, and delivery of a tax allocation refund bond series 2014 Camarillo Corridor Project. Staff report on that. Was that Mr. Campbell?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, in your capacity as successor agency to the Camarillo Community Development Commission. You've stated the item before you. I have just a few slides that I'd like to go through, and then I do have Marianne Goodkind, who is the proposed bond counsel on this refunding. She's going to end with some comments towards the end. Just to reacquaint you with the 2004 bonds, which are the subject of this refunding, they were issued September 1st, 2004. with interest rates ranging from 2.75 to 5.125, and with a maturity date of September 1st, 2036. The bonds do have a current rating from Standard & Poor's of A-, with AMBAC insurance as well. Annual debt service on the bonds is around roughly $1.2 million principal and interest, and the payments are made March and September of every year. We do receive RPTTF funding now under the dissolution process for the former redevelopment agency. We've received those funds in January and July for those March and September payments. And then the outstanding par amount that is the subject of the refunding is approximately $18.1 million. The goal of refunding would be to, number one, take advantage of the current interest rate environment, recognizing that interest rates right now are less than when the bonds were issued about 10 years ago. As a result, we'd also be able to reduce the annual debt service payments, reduce the cash flow issues that are currently present with the existing structure, and then provide additional RPTTF residual. And the residual is described in your agenda report. What would happen with that is that it would then get distributed to all of the affected taxing entities, of which the city is a small recipient as well. If we go through the refunding process, the expectations are that the bonds would continue to retain an A- rating by Standard & Poor's, that we would proceed with a negotiated sale process that would either result in the bonds being refunded either mid-October or December, and we'll talk about that as far as timing just a little bit later. They're proposed to be sold through a negotiated sale process as well, and Mary Ann will probably elaborate on this, primarily because of the current state of dissolution of redevelopment. You want to take, number one, best practices would say these types of bonds lend themselves more so to negotiated sale rather than competitive sale, but then also adding the additional complexities of now being at a dissolution mode with former redevelopment agencies, a negotiated sale where a financial advisor and a finance team would work more closely to guide the process is the recommended approach. The financing team that we're proposing would be to retain our current financial advisor from CM DeCurnis & Company, bond counsel Mary Ann Goodkind from Fulbright and Jaworski, disclosure counsel would be a representative from Quint and Timming, and then the fiscal consultant would be the representative from RSG, who has assisted us with this dissolution process currently. The underwriter would go through an RFP process, and what we would seek is participation from firms that specialize in this sort of refunding. There are several firms that have contacted the city because they know the opportunity for refunding is there. They do have the expertise. We would propose to take that through an RFP process should we be granted the permission to move with the refunding and get the best person on board for that. The proposed bonds, which are the 2014, would retain the same maturity schedule, payment structure, and level debt service as the 2014 bonds, and they would have the same 10-year standard call provision. They would be expected to retain the A- rating from Standard & Poor's, and then all of this information is detailed on your agenda, in your agenda report. Based on current market conditions, the total true interest cost of the refunding would be approximately 3.7%. Estimated savings would be $1.9 million when you compare the existing debt service structure over what the proposed structure would be with lower rates. And when you discount that to net present value, that becomes a $1.3 million savings. Translated into percentages, it would be equal a net present value savings of approximately 7%. That's key because, again, then best practices or industry standards state when you're looking at a refunding opportunity, if you could achieve somewhere around 3%, that would be the time to begin to initiate the process. And recognize this, there's always movement in the bond market. We've run two scenarios prior to the staff report being developed. They've upheld the estimated savings to be around 7% now. But if for some reason over the next couple of months, because this would take several months to accomplish, let's say the bond market were to change significantly and we were not able to achieve a savings of 7%, there's nothing that says that we have to move forward in the process. We can stop it at that point. We would retain the current existing structure and continue to service the debt as present. We would also then be presenting the proposal, and why we're going through this advanced refunding right now is to then get the buy-in from the State Department of Finance so that if there are costs that are incurred for some reason that we had to abandon because the savings just were not there when we got ready to sell the bonds, that those costs would be recovered and the city would not be out any funds. Key dates would be the 23rd. Should you grant approval tonight, on the 23rd, we would seek successor agency approval of the bond documents and the financial advisor report. Then on the 24th, take to the Oversight Board to obtain their approval for the refunding. September the 10th, successor agency would then approve a preliminary official statement, and then that would take the process further with the anticipated final date closing around the October-November timeframe and a bond closing in December. I think at that point I'm actually going to ask Mary Ann if she'll come up, add some additional comments onto the presentation, and with that we'd both be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think Mr. Campbell did an excellent job of going through this process for you. With the dissolution of redevelopment agencies, the successor agency, when it would like to refinance any of its bond issues, now has to seek additional review and approval. One being the Oversight Board would need to approve the actions of the successor agency. And whenever the Oversight Board takes action, the Department of Finance also needs to look at that, possibly review it, and then approve it. The Department of Finance has systematically approved refinancings for these bond issues, for tax allocation bonds, in that their goal is to extract as much savings as they possibly can from the existing bond issues out there so that the taxing agencies receive more of the tax increment. So it's not going for debt service, it's going to the taxing agencies so that they have more of that. There have been probably, oh goodness, now probably about 40 to 50 of these refinancings throughout the state of California, so it's become fairly routine for the Department of Finance in terms of approving financings where interest savings are shown. In the early stages, we would have the successor agency and the Oversight Board possibly take two separate actions, a resolution of intention like type resolution, which is what's before the successor agency. In that respect, when the successor or the Oversight Board takes that action, the DOF has the opportunity within 5 days to want to review that. Then there would be a 40-day waiting period. Whenever there is the Oversight Board taking the action on approving the refinancing, that 45-day turns into a 65-day possibility of waiting period. So that's sort of the difference between a closing somewhere in the October-November range. We would only go to the Oversight Board once, which is now the more prevalent process that's out there. Or if you wanted to have the successor agency approve at your next meeting and then wait have some sort of resolution of intention for the Oversight Board and then have them approve it, that would bring your closing more toward December. We would tend to recommend the more streamlined process because of interest rates, the uncertainty of interest rates, and getting into the market the fastest would be the best thing. Is there any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Little has a question.
First of all, I think if we're going to do this, the sooner the better. I don't see us any reason for waiting other than the interest rates could turn around on us, so it doesn't matter. It seems to me that's the way to do it. I just want to emphasize this property tax return because I think to me, that's the best, the real argument behind that refunding is, we'll save some money, but that money will be in the form of property taxes that would not be collected from the tax increment and would therefore stay with the taxing agencies. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
So in case of the city, we're only talking around $6,400 because our share of the property tax is pretty small. But in the case of the Pleasant Valley School District, I calculate to be around $15,000 a year. So
Correct.
okay. So I think it has some merit and would support it.
Any other questions? Mrs. McDonald?
Yes, I do. You covered what would happen if we find that we don't, we decide not to do it because the rates have risen. And you feel comfortable that the Department of Finance would then approve paying those costs so that the city would not be, on the hook for it?
Yes, that is what we're being told.
And that's a given. I think that, I'm looking at the downside for the city, because the city really isn't going to make that much money because of our small increment. So any costs incurred, there'd be no cost to the city then?
Correct. What we're being told is if we follow this
Except your time.
process, which is the notice of intent, so we're bringing them into the process as early as possible, and then we move down this process and of time of refunding. If for some reason we're not able to achieve those savings, 3% or greater, because they are then involved, they know we would then simply place the costs that were incurred up until that point on a future ROPS and then get reimbursement of that one-time expenditure through that manner.
Can we ask that question up front when we first present it to them?
We did propose the question to by use of our legislative analyst office, or I guess that's the correct term. We did pose that question, and certainly from their perspective, Department of Finance, as Mrs. Goodkind indicated, is open to this sort of thing. It has been the experience of everyone involved on the financing team that if for some reason you can't achieve those savings, that is the process then that you would place it on a ROPS and achieve it in from future disbursement. Now, did we ask that specific question? No. We got that response through members of the other team that have been involved in other similar sort of refunding opportunities. So we have found this in our experience as well. Once they make a judgment or an opinion for one successor agency, it's going to hold for all. So we feel confident from that standpoint that there's very little exposure to the city.
So has any city gone through this process, found that they didn't go ahead with the sell or the refunding? And
Not the ones that we're...
see, that's my biggest fear, is that lucky us, we'd be the ones caught kind of holding the tab, so to speak, because we pull it and then they say sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's a guessing game, and certainly Mary Ann can elaborate on this. We've run two scenarios prior to the report coming before you tonight. In both scenarios, the rate of return has been far in excess of the 3%. It's been higher than the 7% that's in the report right now. And so the bond market is moving, but there is just the likelihood that it's not going to move that significant that would bring it down south of 3%.
4 months.
And the refundings that have already occurred, they specifically have in their resolutions of approval identified and addressed that issue of, should this not move forward, that these unpaid obligations would be put on ROPS and be an obligation. And the DOF has approved those resolutions in all cases. So
Okay, so there's our
we're
safety
pretty
net.
comfortable that that's their position.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Little?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution approving the execution and delivery of certain professional service agreements in connection with the possible issuance, sale, and delivery of tax allocation refunding bonds, Series 2014, Camarillo Corridor Project, and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith.
Second.
A motion, a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none, please vote. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get down to comments from the staff.
No comments from staff.
Comments from board members?
No comments.
Okay, with that, we stand adjourned. All right. With that, I'll reconvene the Camarillo City Council. And that gets us down to item 2, which is amendments to this agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple of amendments and a note. On page 2 of your agenda, item 5, City Council. Item C, letter of support for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. I'd recommend that we move that up to be the first item under City Council to proceed the reading of the ordinance on City Council compensation. We've got Cayuga staff here who I understand needs to leave, so it would be appropriate to do that. Also on page number 3, under closed session, item 13, A, the first closed session item, initiation of litigation, I'd recommend that that be removed from the agenda. We don't need that anymore. And then the other thing, just for the record, I'd like to note that at our previous city council meeting, we had planned on bringing back the sign ordinance for a second reading, and we had advertised that as such. I just wanted to note that that is not coming back for a second reading on this meeting, but it will at a future meeting. We don't have a date certain, but we will renotice and re-advertise when it does come back. That's all my recommended changes.
All right, that's all the amendments. Okay, no presentation. That gets us down to item 4, which is a consent calendar.
Move the approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. That passes unanimously. So that gets us down to item 5, City Council, and we're going to move up the letter of support for the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Do we have a staff,
Mr. Fox with the report.
Yes, Your Honor. This item is something that I'll start out making some more general statements and then get more specific. In general, I think we all acknowledge that because Camarillo partially relies on imported water to deliver to our community, that having a reliable, stable, consistent source is important. And as we know, one of the sources that through the State Water Project that we rely on and for imported water comes from Northern California through the Bay Delta, and that has not been very reliable, particularly in recent years, for a number of reasons. And so for quite a while, there's been an effort to try and bring all the perspectives together through all the various agencies that have an interest in this and try and come up with a plan, and that plan is in the form of a Bay Delta conservation plan that has been prepared and is now circulated for comment. Not to confuse with, there's also a related environmental impact report that is also circulated for comment. That is not the topic tonight. We're not talking about commenting on the environmental document. It's really talking about the proposed plan to provide a more stable source of water. And through that effort, of course, Metropolitan Water District and then Cayugas, who's part of Metropolitan and we're a customer of Cayugas, is doing what we asked them to do, is to watch over these items and then comment on our behalf to make sure that the comments are being heard by those that ultimately make the decisions. And so that's what's before us, is a comment letter that Cayugas proposes to send to support the proposed plan. And I'll get a little more specific. What that plan is proposing to do is provide twin tunnels through the Bay Delta to be able to transport water on a reliable basis and not convey the water as it currently is, which is not so reliable. The compromise, and I think, again, this shows there's been a lot of work to find that middle ground that the most number of people can come to support. The compromise is to lower the threshold or the cap, the amount that Southern California could draw from Northern California through the Bay Delta. The compromise or the offset or the benefit of doing that is then we at least come up with a plan that we would have a reliable source and the same amount of water each year could be delivered to Southern California. And I think the trade-off is, and it's a good trade-off, is that we sacrifice a little bit in the amount of water that we can bring to Southern California, but we offset that with a consistent source. That actually improves over what years ago was happening as far as drawing water from Northern California. So some of the maybe opposition benefits from this plan as well, because there's less water being taken from Northern California. Also, there's a substantial amount of ecosystem rehabilitation that's proposed as part of this effort as well. So it will help restore some of the ecosystem in the Bay Delta. So there's a little bit of something for everybody, but on a issue of this magnitude, you're not going to get 100% consensus. There's always going to be conflicting interests. And as a result of that, there has been some negative press and negative opinions expressed about this. But I think when we when we look at what we're trying to accomplish here, and that is to create a reliable source of water and do it in a way that's as fair as possible to the most number of participants, this plan is probably as good as it gets. And so what staff's recommending is that we support what we've asked Cayugas to do, and that is to represent us and make sure, you know, that our positions are heard. The governor supports this proposal. Most of the state supports this proposal. Federal government supports this proposal. So, and a number of environmental interests have also been involved and are behind this. So, what we're really looking to do, and the action we're proposing that you take tonight, is to authorize the mayor's signature to go on the letter. It'd be one letter that Cayugas is sending, and then have all of the participants or their customers that are willing to sign on, basically have their signatures on the letter along with the city seal. And that is just to show that there's a unified interest in supporting this project amongst the Cayugas service area. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We also have, as far as city staff, Lucy McGovern's here that has worked on this, and then we have Cayugas, I believe, staff and a board member here as well to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions at this point?
I got a
Mike has them.
Mike, do you have a question?
Tom, in looking at this in the past and watching what was going on in the troubles up there, them agreeing to something, and still may not go, we've got to wait and see. But this means no extra water. It means a reliable water, same amount of water we're getting, but from a source that you don't bother the smelt, number one. But when we need extra water, let's say you have extra water and there's a lot of rain like it was in 2012. Before, the smelt kept them from pumping more water into storage basins. That's why we don't have a lot of water out in the valley. The storage basins weren't refilled, okay, and because they wouldn't let them. But now this is in a new area that doesn't affect the smelt. Are they going to allow, and I think this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks in this thing, are they going to be willing to allow them to build storage basins where they can, during those peak seasons, they can store water?
I'll answer this in general terms, and if you want to continue, sure. We can maybe ask for Cayugas to provide additional information. This project, at least the plan that we're asking you to sign or be a signature on the support letter tonight, is really just to rely on conveying the water through the Bay Delta. It doesn't really address storage so much on a global sense. Then we look at in Southern California, as the water gets delivered to the metropolitan service area in Cayugas, it's really up to Metropolitan to determine how to store the water. And they've had some recent projects in recent years that have expanded dramatically the amount of capacity they have to store water, which is one of the reasons that even in the midst of a pretty significant drought, we're still in a fairly stable condition as far as water available to Southern California. So the project, the Bay Delta project in the conservation plan, isn't looking at some kind of statewide storage system. It's more to convey the water through the Bay Delta, and then it's up to Metropolitan to control the storage. But perhaps, Susan, if you could come up just to confirm that I'm correct on that, or if there's any more you have to add as far as opportunities to store additional water.
Yes, thank you, Tom. You were very correct on that. Susan Mulligan, General Manager at Cayugas, and Andy Waters, board member representing the eastern half of City of Camarillo on our board. Yes, this doesn't address storage. Metropolitan, as you said, has a lot of storage. They have some storage that doesn't cost them anything in Lake Mead, and because although we don't physically have access to much Colorado River water, they have both sources, so they can take more state project water when it's available and hold back Colorado River water. They have groundwater storage agreements in the Central Valley that currently we're pulling water from. And then there's some storage in the state water project. That being said, as you probably know, there are moves afoot to look at more storage in the state water project. But there's not much point in putting more water in the state project unless we have the BDCP.
Unless we have what? I'm sorry.
The tunnels.
The what?
The tunnels.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Little had a...
Susan, one of the questions that's been bothering me about this whole tunnel. I understand the purpose of the tunnels is to get the water transfer out of the delta area and bring it underground, bring it to the pumping plants, pump it over the mountains at that point. But the water comes north from the northern Sierras, as I understand it, through Oroville Dam and others. And it seems to me that the reliability is only as good as we have rain and snow melt at those points where the water is generated and collected. So we could still have problems down, even if we have the tunnels, if that area has not the water to send to the to the delta and picked up by these tunnels and then shipped to us, we can still have the same.
Your Honor, I'm going to take the first crack at answering that. And yes, there's maybe not 100% guaranteed reliability, but the reliability goes way up with this project. And I'll explain. If you look at prior to, I think, the late 2000s, after 2006 sometime, prior to that period, yes, weather is different from year to year, the amount of rain is different from year to year, but there's actually quite a bit of rain in Northern California that goes out to the ocean. Yeah. And it wasn't so much a question of a problem with reliability. Prior to that, there is usually enough water to transfer to deliver to Southern California, and we usually took pretty close to the maximum amount that that Southern California was allowed to take. It wasn't until the late 2000s that the Delta smelt issue and the pumping and some of the more the ecosystem related issues surfaced, and that's really what was impairing the reliability. Not so much, again, weather, but but nature, I guess. And the tunnels will at least compensate for that. So yes, there may be some years where it doesn't rain as much, but in general that wasn't a problem in the past. This is a way to get around the more obvious impairment to reliability, and that's the delta smelt and related issues.
Bill, could I follow up on that just a little bit? Because when they talk about reliability, every water conference you go to will tell you that within 30 years we're going to have a break in the delta. Everyone's predicted the same thing. It could be tomorrow. But if it breaks, then we could be without water for 3 months to 3 years. It depends how big it is.
That's a good point.
That's where it's the
Absolutely.
unreliability is what I'm talking about now. Reliable makes this more reliable because that won't happen.
Absolutely, that's a good point. It also protects us against a future potential catastrophic event.
Any other questions? Did you want to make any more comments or anything? I didn't know if you want.
No, I think Tom explained it very well. Thank you.
I think Mrs. McDonald did have one other one before you go.
Well, a couple. First of all, I had not heard that the governor was supporting it, so he's come on board and.
He's been on board.
It's his proposal.
It's his
He's the one that put it together in the beginning. This idea of the co-equal goals and getting the tunnels and the environmental restoration together came from his office a few years ago.
He's still there with them.
Absolutely, he is.
I have a question on, so the letter is going to be written in a way that all the cities sign off on it then? Is that what I heard?
All the cities who agree to support, and we're going through the rounds of the cities now.
So we won't have our own letter, we're all signing this letter.
The proposal is that everybody sign a letter together because it's more powerful. This letter was actually requested by the governor, not this one, but in general. He wants groups to get together in Southern California and really express support for this BDCP and the tunnels and the environmental restoration. So it was our sense that if we in Ventura County got the cities and water districts and some other groups like the Chambers of Commerce together to all sign on to a single letter, it would be more powerful. So that was the idea. If everybody's comfortable with the language, that's the most effective thing that we can do.
So in our staff report, it's saying,
My God. On our staff report, it mentions that we would have our own, but this is the letter we're going to sign off on then. Is what I'm now hearing.
That's what we would request, is that
Okay.
you would sign on to that. All the logos would be at the top for everybody who was signing on, and then we would have signatures of the mayors at the bottom.
Okay.
Just for clarification, so that that you know that we're certainly staff is supportive of this and supportive of what Cayugas is requesting. In the staff report, we had identified a couple alternatives, and the recommended alternative, and it maybe could have been worded a little differently, it was authorize the mayor to sign instead of maybe a letter, it should be the letter supporting the BCP, BDCP, and that letter would be the one that Cayugas has drafted.
Your Honor,
Any other questions?
one last question. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get to the letter then. So if this is a letter we're signing off on, then I do have one question, and maybe you can clarify for me what this means. It talks about the water and the reliability and so forth, and it says the state water will continue to serve as a primary source for our drinking water and recycled water projects. Can you explain what that means?
It is the supply for our recycled water. In fact, it's a large supply for our groundwater as well, because the imported water comes in and it gets reused as recycled water, and also as the recycled water plants discharge to the creeks and as people irrigate the lawns, it gets reused. And that's part of the message that we want to communicate. We're not just using the water and it goes away. We're recycling, we're using groundwater that gets recharged, we're doing our part, and certainly your city is doing its part to be reusing the water. And the source of that is state project water, especially for our area, since we're so heavily dependent on it. That's the intent of that, is to make that point.
And we could use Camarillo as an example of that. Later this year, as we start recycling water, you look at the source of water that ends up at our treatment plant, 55% of that is coming from, right now, is coming from imported water.
In a roundabout way, I guess it does get recycled, is what you're saying. I took a more direct route to thinking, why are we putting that into recycle? But it's the roundabout way that it's.
It's a roundabout way. I can see how that might be unclear.
Your Honor,
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, Mike, did you have?
just, I'm all for this, because we need to make sure there's, even though we may be doing our own pretty soon, everybody in Southern California can't, and they need to have water. The big stumbling block in going up there has been always those, in the valley, basically, not here, not with us, but all up through the, middle of the valley. They have farmers and other things that, I don't want to be fighting and fussing with the farmers. They supply our food. But they need storage basins. And I think that's what's been the argument up there. Will the environmentalist group that's been opposing this thing all along, are they going to go along with this now? I hope.
With the tunnels?
Yes.
I think there are some environmental interests who are in favor of the tunnels, and there are some that are not. So they won't all come along, no.
Okay. Well, I'm all for you. Go get them.
Yeah, two comments. First of all, I agree that we've got to get the water out of the delta in order for this to be reliable, and for the reasons that's been talked about and written about and so forth. To me, it's like we have a freeway coming down from the northern part. It gets into a series of residential streets, and then ultimately it gets back and we pump it out and it's a freeway again. So we've got to get that taken care of, and I think this is probably the only way politically that it's going to happen, is to have this gigantic project. But it's probably, but with the agreement that we're not going to increase the capacity of water to Southern California, will mean, and I think we all should understand, this means that any increases, it's going to be on our backs, the city councils, the water districts, and metropolitan, to provide that water in some manner, whether it's through desalination, whether it's through recycling, or whatever it is, because we're finding new groundwater sources, whatever. So we're getting something, but we're also taking on a big responsibility down the road for adding water to the population of this part of the state.
Move to authorize the mayor to sign the Cayugas letter supporting the BDCP.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
And I might mention, Your Honor, this is on the agenda for VCOG tomorrow night, and I'm assuming since the council approved it, that obviously you can vote in favor of VCOG signing off on that tomorrow night. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, next, item 5A, it's ordinance 1091, an ordinance of the City Council, the City of Camarillo, amending section 2.08.040 of the Camarillo Municipal Code relating to the compensation of the city council members. Do we have a staff report on
I can provide a brief staff report. Previously, on June 25th, the City Council considered the first reading of a draft ordinance related to City Council compensation for calendar years 2015 and 2016. Following state law, City Councils are permitted to consider an up to 5% annual compensation adjustment every 2 years in advance of a November general election to be effective after the election. At the June 25th meeting, the City Council directed that staff amend the draft ordinance to provide for a 2% compensation increase for each of 2015 and 2016. The item before you reflects City Council direction, and the second reading is before you for consideration.
Any questions or anything at that? Okay, with that, I'll request a reading of the title, please.
This is ordinance number 1091, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, amending section 2.08.040 of the Camarillo Municipal Code relating to the compensation of city council members.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any other discussion?
Your Honor, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, yeah. Okay. I voted against this 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to vote against it again. And two reasons. One is that I don't think that the city should have ordinances that increase their compensation automatically in the second year of a, if you're going to increase compensation, have a vote up or down in the year that you're going to, in the year prior to the year you're going to have or not have the increase. So I object to that part of it. I also think we've had 2 years of 5% increases, and that's more than a lot of people have.
Mr. Morgan?
Your Honor, when I brought this up, when I brought this up about not accepting a 5% increase, I think it was wrong. What I really meant to say was I'd rather vote on this as we go along and not make it automatic increases. Thinking about what went on that night, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's what I meant to do. So we can look at ourselves as we go along and not be automatic. I know 2% was what we predicted as maybe what salary the employees were going to get in the average. But I think maybe I can't vote on it the way it is now because I want to wait and let's see how we do each time. Let us vote on our raises.
Could I ask the attorney a question? Sure. I don't believe we can vote on it next year and for a raise for next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the way the code works is that you vote on it during the election year to apply it to the next 2 years rather than individual years.
It's based on the election year cycle.
Yes.
All right, any other?
Well, I was wondering if Mr. Morgan still felt that way or wanted to delete the second one and just have it two.
When can we start voting on it year by year?
That's the point. Under the government code, you vote in it on an election year, and it applies for a 2-year period. So your choices are either you don't have any increase for 2015 or 2016, and then you revisit this at a future date, but you're going to have the same issue then that you have now with regards to voting 1 year versus 2 years.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think that the 2% reflects what we're giving our staff basically on the average. And I don't think we should get paid any more than getting any increase in our salaries any more than our normal staff. And so if we can't do that until 2017, apparently, for that different budget season, I think 2%. And what does that equate to? How many, 60 bucks or something?
It's $27 a month.
$27 a month. That's nothing, okay, from what we do and our increasing responsibilities that we've had over the years. And it gets to be even heavier all the time because we've got a lot of different things we're working on. The desal plant, a lot of other things.
I might add, too, the $27 is before taxes, too.
Right. So we're not getting that, folks. We're getting $27 a month more. And for 2 years at 2%, I think that's fair. So I can go along with it. I'll second the motion. Oh, you've already seconded, Kevin.
Is there any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, please vote. Okay, that passes 3-2 with Mrs. McDonald and Mr. Little voting no.
I have
Okay.
a question.
Yeah, question.
The people who voted no, are you going to accept the raise?
I actually thought about that, and I decided that it would cost more for payroll to have to calculate them all different than it would to be not to do
You're
it.
going to accept the raise, okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Good.
If it were a lot of money, I wouldn't, but it would cost more than $20 a month to have them do it differently, so. But if it's a big deal, I'll gladly say no.
Don't matter, I was just curious.
I give my money to other causes.
That's a good way of doing it.
Okay. All right, any other? Okay, so we're on item B, which is a League of California Cities voting delegate. Is
I
everyone
nominate the mayor.
Second.
quick?
Don, you're in there, Kevin.
Do we need to vote?
Do we need to vote on this? Okay, let's vote, please. That passes unanimously.
Kevin, that's
All
the
right,
one
we're
job of-
unanimous. What do you know, huh?
That's the one job of mayor that no one likes to do.
For the alternate, I nominate the vice mayor.
Second.
Done.
Okay, motion and second, please vote. That passes unanimously.
For the public's benefit, that means you have to stay there a lot longer time
They
when
don't do
everybody's
it that
leaving.
way anymore. They did a lunch and everything.
And sit there and go through this without all the cities in California on all the different, what do you call it?
Maybe there won't be
Proposals and things to, anyway, it's a pain.
All right, so that, let's see, no closed session tonight. Let's see if we can get the new business in. Mr. City Manager, anything tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there is one closed session that we have left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we amended to eliminate one of them, but not the other.
Getting rid of the first.
Oh, I wrote the wrong one. Okay, so with that, do we want to announce, Counselor,
Yes.
the closed session item?
Yes, my understanding is that there should be sufficient time to get to the closed session in the 6 to 7:30 time slot. So this would be a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Number of cases is 1.
Okay. So with that, do we have time to do the new business? We've got about 5 minutes. Do we have a full? I don't know. Maybe we better.
Mr. Fox has a brief report for us on FEMA flood maps that you might hear about. So.
Oh, yes.
Okay, do you want to start with that anyhow? Let's at least get that done.
Sure. And we have some good news. We've been laboring for a number of years to try and remove people from the flood zone. As you recall, a number of years ago, we had FEMA publish new maps, and we went from 35 properties to over 8,000 properties that were being impacted by that effort. And in some cases, it was because FEMA's analysis was not very detailed and maybe overstated the problem. We've been working with them over the years and had already achieved some successes and had reduced the number of people impacted. The last most recent efforts were two. One is out by Village of the Park. The segment of Cayugas Creek was widened. The improvements are completed, but the paperwork with FEMA takes a while. That paperwork, we've heard, has now reached its final step with FEMA, where they've approved the project and approved that the flood zone can be remapped. That now takes 90 days. It has to kind of sit, 120 days. It has to sit and wait for, essentially it's an appeal period, but I don't think too many people are going to appeal not having to pay insurance anymore. So that clock has to tick down. The good news is when that time elapses, then people won't be having to get flood insurance anymore. An impact that we're dealing with is this last step required a letter to be sent out that has to follow FEMA language, so it's confusing. And that was sent to all of the nearly 1,000 properties, or actually 1,300 properties impacted along Cayugas Creek. As a result, we're getting numerous calls on a daily basis. We put our number at the bottom knowing that it was confusing, that people would probably want some assistance in understanding what it meant. The good news is people are calling, and we're spending about 3 hours a day fielding calls and explaining what it means. They're very happy with the efforts that the city, they understand the city has gone out of their way to take on an issue that really we normally wouldn't be responsible for. they're a little frustrated with FEMA, but they do express their appreciation when they understand the effort that it's taken to get to this point. So the unfortunate thing is that because of the way FEMA works, this time of year is when a lot of people purchase their original policies when this all started, so their policies are coming due for renewal. Even though they know they're going to be out, FEMA won't give them any grace period. They have to purchase the insurance, the next round of insurance, or else they're in default with their mortgage. And then once the final, whatever, 120 days elapses and there's not an issue and everything goes into force, then the people can apply to get reimbursed for the premium that they had to pay. Again, that's a confusing process with FEMA, so what we will be proposing is later in the year we'll be sending a letter out advising people on who to contact and how to contact them, and have a form letter that they can just fill in the blanks to help them get their reimbursement. So we'll continue to assist the community to make this as streamlined and easy for them as possible. That's one. The other effort going on is just north of City Hall here on the other side of Ponderosa. We had to develop, which was considered the most sophisticated flood model in the country, to convince FEMA that they had overstated the flooding problem, and they've agreed with that. And we're hearing any day they're going to sign off on that, which also then starts the either 90 or 120-day time period. And when that elapses, those residents will also no longer have to pay insurance. We're hearing people, some having to pay over $2,000 a month, and actually as the rules are changing, that number was going to go up. So this is a very important accomplishment, I think, that's helping a lot of people. Just to put it in simple terms, if for every 1,000 residents paying insurance, that's anywhere from $1 million to $2 million a year that those residents would be paying for the rest of the time they occupy their homes. That's a lot of money that just a few residents are paying. So this is a significant impact that we're lifting from a sizable part of the community.
So some of them some of them are paying $2,000 a month?
I'm sorry, a year. If I said a month, I apologize.
I was gonna say,
yeah, I'm
wow.
glad you clarified that.
Okay.
More than a house payment.
Now, also, now the refunds, is that through FEMA or through their insurance carrier?
It's actually through